Welcome, subscribers. We are continuing our discussion with Andy Lloyd, author of Dark Star, Evidence for Planet X, and we spent about an hour talking about the science and began to talk a little bit about the mythology of Planet X and where it might be and so forth, and the scientific evidence for this. And I want to continue now talking a little bit more about some of the fascinating material that has to do with the cataclysms and, of course, the upcoming end date of the Mayan calendar, 2012. And I guess the most obvious question to begin here with, Andy, is considering the background, or that what we have, from the mythologies, that there have been tremendous cataclysms in the past. The obvious question is, could this be something that is returning? And could we once again be, have this come upon us, plague us, as it were, and actually cause tremendous, upheaval and cataclysms?
Well, very, very possibly, yes. The idea that the Earth has been ravaged by catastrophes is not a particularly new one, but it's one that's wasn't favoured until fairly recently. We went through a historical period where I suppose from a religious point of view, the Earth was deemed to be a place that was made by God. It was nice and stable, and it was our sort of gift to look after and make sure we did the right thing for it. But of course, as our science has grown and expanded, and our geological understanding has, we've come to realise that the Earth has been regularly visited by great disasters over the eons. Some of those disasters have been monumental enough to have destroyed whole species of animal on our planet, and you have what's called extinction level events, where usually caused by, they think, the collision of the Earth with an asteroid or a comet, which not only creates a huge sort of seismic disruption, but will throw out tsunami and create what's called a nuclear winter by throwing so much debris up into the atmosphere that the sort of Earth goes into sort of winter for a long period of time and kills off whole species of life on this planet. Those events, fortunately, are very rare, and they appear to follow a cycle of about sort of 30 million years, if there's a cycle at all. So if you're looking at sort of the kind of catastrophes that wipe out whole species, then they wouldn't be tied in necessarily to the return of a planet that comes back every 10,000, 3,000, whatever years. There's something that happens every 30 million years. So they could be down to comet swarms. They could be created by the existence of this kind of planet, but it doesn't seem so likely. However, you could also have lesser catastrophic events of the sort that create mini ice ages, create great temporary damage to the planet, and create great upheaval, but don't necessarily wipe out species of animal or sort of turn the world over in some monumental way. And those kind of catastrophes are potentially the sort that are described in ancient writings, from oral traditions, from myths. Those sort of catastrophes may well be connected with the return of an object that's got a cometary-like orbit, because that kind of time period would be sort of 5,000, 10,000 year period, which would work in better with lesser events that lie within sort of mankind's existence. We as a species have been on this planet for about 100,000 years in the form that we are at the moment. So us with our sort of super brains and our ability to use our hands to make tools, we've been like this for about 100,000 years. And during that time period, there may well have been the potential for 10 such events. And it's quite possible that our traditions about the flood and other catastrophes that have grown up within global religious traditions and myths are connected with the return of this planet.
So is there any clear connection here to 2012? I mean, beyond the fact that the Mayan calendar ends at that point, and that they, as far as I've been able to interpret that, they speak of a renewal cycle that is coming and going, and I don't know if the fact that the calendar ends on this date has to do with anything that time itself ends, meaning that this is, again, the end of the world. I don't think so, but what's your take on all of that?
I think it's the Mayan tradition is fascinating insofar as the Mayan people were not particularly well advanced in many respects, but their mathematical system was remarkable, very complex, very precise, and the idea of these ages, the time periods involved for a reasonably primitive people present the idea that something is occurring over long periods, which is most likely connected with the skies, is most likely an astronomical event of some description. Maurice Cotterill writes about the potential tie-in of the Mayan calendar with effects on the sun, where there are certain great cycles that may be connected with 2012, or may be connected with devastation of some form or another, and the end of the ages on a routine basis. I'm not averse to the idea at all that ages come and go, and that it's possible that humans have sort of technologically and socially evolved up to a certain level, and then some great catastrophe has arisen on the Earth that's shunted us right back to living in caves again, and that our sort of period of prehistory during the last ice age, there may have been periods of time when we sort of progressed quite well and then got knocked back. And the last 6,000 years, we've really got our act together, or so. So I'm not averse to that. It's not clear to me how the 5,000 odd years of the Mayan sort of age would fit into an orbit of planet X, but the 5,000 sort of year zone does sort of fit in with the sort of period of returns of comets, more so than any other astronomical correlation. So there could be a link, but I think it's fair to say that if something the size of a brown dwarf were to come strolling into the planetary zone around our sun within 5 years of now, that we'd know about it. I certainly am not going to claim, in fact I would counter any claim, that such a planet is on our doorstep and is about to visit us and cause destruction. But there are ways where it could be connected, particularly with comets, because as this object goes around the sun, in its orbital path may be filled with stable points in the orbital path, where comets might exist and be moving around the sun in a similar way to the dark star, but out of phase with it. And it's quite possible that a comet swarm may arrive in the sort of vicinity of 2012 that is in the orbit of this object, but isn't actually alongside it. So I can consider a mechanism whereby the dark star may create a 2012-like event, but directly, I don't think it could do so. I don't think that's likely. And I personally, I agree with you. I don't think 2012 is going to mark the end of civilization as we know it.
Yeah. Speaking about the end of days, there is one thing I picked up on your website there, and this again, this connects with comets and all of this on where I want to go with this. And this was about Nostradamus' date, I think. Was it 3760 AD? Was that a prediction about the end of the world as that were? But another date, because this, if I understand things correctly, this is something almost that wax and wanes, as it were. There is a dark period, and then it's it's a light period, or it's a period of where there is not any where we can't spot or see these comets, and then they come back in a cyclical fashion. And I guess that one date that kind of popped up here was 1881. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. It's tied in with the idea that let's assume that Citroen is right, and his planet X has got a period of about 3,600 years. Now, he says that's an approximation. He himself sort of says that it's built around the mathematical system of the Sumerians, but he believes that particular unit, the Sar, or the Shah, is directly sort of linked with the orbit of Nibiru. It's about 3,600 years. Now, his books write about the appearance of this star, its bright aspect, as you say, it's perihelion, that it appears at the beginning of, effectively, the beginning of civilization, of human civilization, and that it sort of kick-started the Nippur calendar and the Jewish start of days. So that dates it to 3,760 BC. Now, if you take that date and you add on around about 3,600 years, then you get approximating sort of the time of Christ, around about the Messianic era. And, I've argued a few times that, maybe this Marduk, Nibiru, is the Messianic star, the Star of Bethlehem, which is sort of whole other area of research, really.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, if that's the case, then the next time it appears is going to be around about, as you say, around about 3,800 AD. And that correlates extremely well with Nostradamus' prophecy, which, it's very interesting in its own right. So the reappearance, the bright aspect, the perihelion of this planet could have been sort of perceived as a prediction by the seer himself, which is a very interesting idea. Again, I don't think that necessarily means that the end of the world will occur then. I don't think Nostradamus means that, but it would, again, mark the end of an age, because each time this thing appears, the sort of calendars restart, the age restarts, starts the Jewish current count of years, and then it became the Christian calendar, and then after the Nostradamus date would become the next one, the New Age, in about, 1,800 years' time. Now, you mentioned 1881. Well, if you take the sort of 3,760-year period and you halve it, then that's what you would argue as being the halfway point, which is the most distant point. So not the closest, but the most distant.
Okay.
It's roughly where we're at the moment. It's probably just on that time scale. It's a little bit further than its most distant point. And the exact sort of correlation, I would argue, would be would bring us to 1881, which is the aphelion, or the most distant point. And 1881 is a date which is very important to people who are into esoteric knowledge or hidden knowledge, the forbidden knowledge of various sort of cults and organizations that keep secrets. It's particularly important to Freemasons, Rosicrucians. It was important, I also believe, to Jehovah's Witnesses at one point. And the 1881 date is important to me for that reason, but also because it's connected